Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the three tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $E James, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, aka Friend to Fatherless Daughters on Instagram. And I believe that everyone can live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problems, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal podcast. We are in season 2. Episode 23. That's right. We're plugging away. We're keeping it moving. And today, just like any other day, we are blessed to have a guest on that is going to share their story. My very special guest, Miss Angelina Watkins. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here.
No problem. First of all, let me say thank you, because I know you could be doing anything else as a busy businesswoman that you are. You know, you could have been doing anything else, but you're here with me, and I definitely appreciate you being on. So let's jump right into it. Okay. Miss Angelina, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and let them know exactly what it is that you do.
Well, again, my name is Angelina Watkins. And I call myself the Queensformation Coach, but I'm a transformation coach where I am helping women become a better version of themselves and transform their lives and create the life they want. There's so many of us that are stuck from the trauma of our past, and we're not pursuing our dreams, and we're unhappy and we're unfulfilled. So my job is to coach them into being a better version of themselves, healing from their past and discovering their purpose so that they can create the life they want.
Oh, I love that. You touched on a couple of things that I like. One of them is looking for finding your purpose. So I mentioned this before, and I hope my listeners don't don't get mad at me. Like, why you keep bringing that up? But
because they need to hear it.
Right. So God gave me this on my journey to finding my voice and finding my purpose. God gave me this quote, and the quote says that pain births purpose, and purpose births progress, and progress is the evidence that God is at work. And so, you know, everything that we go through, especially in our past, the pain of our past plays a part in the purpose that he has for us, because we don't go through everything that we go through is not just because, you know, it's unfortunate. Sometimes it may be because of some of the things that we've done, and maybe because of the actions of someone else, but it's not wasted. You know, God never wastes an opportunity to show up. He never wastes an opportunity to use you for the purpose that he has for you. So definitely helping people to find that purpose and find that voice is such a amazing thing. And I love when I talk to someone and they say that they're helping people to do that. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of it, so let's jump right into it. So I know one of the things that that you address is that your past doesn't have to define you. And so I know in our stories, we all have things that we've been through personally that uh, adds to our story, should I say. And so sometimes those things that, from our past, while it doesn't define us, it does kind of give us a voice. So in your own story, what would be some of the things that maybe you have overcame in your past that now you use as a benefit to uplift the women that you come in contact with, and even helping them to find their purpose with the example of how you found yours?
Sure. So if I can go back, because this kind of goes back to what you said your listeners might be tired of you saying,
Yeah.
right? Which is that your pain births your purpose, right? And so my purpose is to help other women, but that came about through my own pain. And so just a lot of the things that happened to you in the past that are said to you, you might have had some trauma, some tragedies. And for me, it probably was a culmination of things, right?
Mhm.
And you've heard my story, but it started when I was molested, and then from there, it just is just all these things that are happening as a young person that you don't know how to deal with what's happening to you, and you don't have anyone walking you through that and helping you heal on your journey and understand the things that are happening. I mean, dealing with molestation, dealing with death, dealing with loss, dealing with just things such as in my childhood, that I felt like I was stripped of and I didn't even understand. All of these things are just piling up, right? And then as you get older, now you bring it in relationships and falling in love and getting your heart broken. And it's just one thing after another. And if you don't know how to heal, if you don't know how to go through that healing process, if you don't know how to, you don't have that emotional intelligence of how to regulate and understand what's happening to you, it just ends up being buried and buried and buried, but it keeps piling up, right? And so eventually I get tired. And I'm like, I don't want to live like this. I'm unhappy. I'm unfulfilled. Life is not going the way I visioned it. I see all these people on TV and radio and everything else, and they're so happy. I want that. And so I had to now go on my own journey. And so what I do now is I show women how to heal, because there is a process for healing, and they have to know that you don't have to stay there. I didn't know I could get out of this. I was just telling someone earlier today that when I was going through some pain with it from a failed relationship, I didn't know nothing to do but ask God, give me strength, give me strength. And I told her I was thinking there was a time in my life I didn't even know whether or not I was going to live to see tomorrow. I I was good if I just went to sleep and didn't wake back up, because the pain
Mhm.
was of heartache was so unbearable. And it was one of those things where I didn't think it was ever going to go away, but it does. But there's a process. And when you follow the process, you're able to heal faster. When you don't have a process, you're just out there, just as you say, not dealing, not healing.
Right. Yep.
And
And you
so,
know what? You mentioned two things that I want to touch on real quick. One of the issues that we have definitely in our community is the lack of therapy. The lack of getting the help that we need. So I was raised up in a church, so I
mhm,
definitely know how much of a part, being a PK and all of that. I definitely know how much of a part that ministry plays, in our community. But ministry does not take the place of therapy. There's some things you can live through. There's some things you can talk through. There's some things you can pray through. But then there's some things you gotta go get some help. You know what I mean?
absolutely, yes.
You gotta go get some help. And I the fact that you even mentioned about the getting past the molestation and things that happened when you was young. I definitely applaud you for that. and was one of the reasons why I wanted you on, because we don't even have to dive into it, the whole situation, but the fact that you know you lived past that and to become the woman that you are and still becoming, right? So
Yes, still,
still
always.
becoming,
It's a
right?
lifelong journey.
So, but to see that within itself is a example, or should I say, a light to somebody who may have went through that and still haven't found themselves yet. And I know another thing that you mentioned about going through that relationship that that was so hard that you didn't care whether you woke up the next day, right? Which brings up
Mhm.
another issue in our culture that we don't often talk about, which is depression and also suicide, right? And it's something I talk about, often was my bout with it when I went through a period where I was getting divorced, I was in debt. Then my mom passed away, and it was just like you mentioned, that whole pile on things that happen in your life, and it's like, man, I can't. I don't even think I could take no more. And it got to a point where I actually considered it. You're like, you know what? I just want the pain to stop.
Mhm.
And again, I was praying. You know what I'm saying? I had people praying for me and things like that. But there's some things that you can only get through getting the help that you need. And fortunately for me, I was able to join a bereavement group and work through my sadness, work through my bereavement of losing my mom and all of that was happening at that time, to help me to get to the other side of it, as well as some help from some loved ones and things like that. But sometimes it takes us giving a voice to it to let others know, definitely, like I said, in our community, that hey, you can make it too. You can live through this. Now it's going to take some work. It's going to take that process to get there, but you can do it. And so I definitely applaud you for even bringing that out, because I know the first time that I heard that was on your podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And I was just like, oh, I have to have her on, because if you're strong enough to give a voice to that, to the world, then that's a message that I also want to share on my platform to those that I know that need help, that maybe need healing in that space. And so that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, outside of you just being great as you are, but that was just one part of your story. I said, I definitely want to, highlight that part. So again, I thank you for even sharing that with your listeners, first of all, which is how I heard it, on the podcast, but then again sharing it here. So I thank you for that.
Can I say something?
You sure can.
I want people to know that telling your story is healing, right? Because we have to release these things that are deep down inside of us, in our hearts and our minds. We've got to let those things go. And so when you tell your story, you relieve yourself of some pain, you relieve yourself of some guilt, you get those burdens off your shoulder. It's very important for people to know that they've got to tell their story. Now, you don't necessarily have to tell the story publicly, but you need to tell your story. And that's why therapy is helpful, because now you can go into this therapy session and you can talk to this therapist or a coach, a mentor, or whomever that you trust, to tell your story so that you can get it out. Because releasing that verbally, it really does something to someone in the inside, right? It relieves you of some things. And the more you tell your story, the more healing can happen. Because as long as you suppress those things, healing can't happen. And so that's what kind of was happening for me. If we go back again, because you mentioned, going through a divorce and being in debt. Listen, I done had all of that as well. Not necessarily a divorce, but it was a long-term relationship that felt like a divorce. I ended up going through some financial ruin because of losing investments, properties, and business, and I hit rock bottom. And so can you imagine all of these things over the years are piling up, and it's just being suppressed. And what happens is you learn to navigate the dysfunction in order to be able to cope and get through your day. But that stuff is still there, and it's suppressed. And as we become adults, we say certain things and we act in certain ways and we don't even know where it's coming from, right? Because we done suppressed all of these things that have happened to us in the past. And so that was me, the molestation and the the loss and the being controlled in my childhood. And then you get into these relationships where you're not being treated right and your heart is being broken. And then I'm going through financial ruin and none of this is being dealt with. And then here I am as this adult, I'm struggling with relationships. I'm struggling with um, communicating with my husband. I'm struggling with communicating with my children. I'm struggling with communicating with people at work, not even realizing that all of this stuff that I have suppressed is being acted out in my adulthood. And so I think it's very important for people to realize you have a voice. And when you use your voice, it starts your healing process.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I address, even dealing with the fatherless daughters, is that just because you are successful in one area or several areas does not mean that you're still not masking the hurt or the effects of the hurt that's happened in your past. And a lot of times when I talk to fatherless daughters, because I deal with adult fatherless daughters, and especially those that have had success in their lives in different areas, they're like, oh, I'm good. And I say, well, not really, because pain, just like any other things, dealing with being fatherless and other pains also that you push down, they only going to stay down for so long. Right. And when it comes to the top, it's generally going to come to the top at a time that's not convenient for you. And especially for an example, I talk about grief. When my mom passed, I remember talking to my brother, my baby brother, and he was saying one day he was driving home. He was going to, my parents' house. This was after my mom had passed away, probably been like a year after or so. And he's driving, he gets to the house and he pulls into the driveway. And when he pulls into the driveway, the grief just hit him and he just started bawling, crying in the car, and it was just out of nowhere. Now, my mom had been gone for a while at this point, but because he never got that out, he never dealt with it, he never took the time to process that grief, it came out at a time where it wasn't convenient for him, right? And I remember even myself one time, this was in the beginning of it when it first happened, I was at church, and being a minister, I'm in the pulpit, I'm sitting up front and I'm crying. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm to the side. I'm not, in front of the mic or anything, but I'm over to the side, but it's coming out, and I have to sit there in that moment and cry, on this platform where I'm sure everyone could see me, but because I didn't address it, because I didn't handle it and, give it a way to come out in a way that was good for me or healthy for me, then I kept pushing it down and then it just exploded, you know. And if I had been at work or if I had been somewhere else, and that happened, what effects would that would have had on my job or whatever that I may have been doing at that time. And, God forbid I'm driving or something and now I can't see because I'm crying, So definitely we have to give voice to those things that we're dealing with. We have to give voice to those things that's within us in order to, like you said, get them out. Because if we don't get them out or if we don't let it out, it's like a teapot, when it heats up and then you hear that little whistle, that means it's in the reach the top, So we got to definitely make sure that as things are heating up with us, that we're able to vent it and let some of that steam out, while we control it. Because once it gets to the point where it's pushing out on its own, it's too late. We've lost control at that point, So
we got to stop saying I'm good when we're not good. We got to start being honest with ourselves about how we're feeling and what we're going through. You're not good. You just cussed out your child. You're not good. You just went off on your husband and walked out and slammed the door. You're not good. You just got mad because somebody didn't put the plates away the way you wanted them to be put away. You're not good. When we are exploding and having these explosive scenarios, And over minor little, especially when they're minor little things, but we're getting so upset and we can't even control our emotions. Honey, baby, you're not good. You're not good. We got to stop thinking in that the way we're acting is okay. We got to stop normalizing dysfunctional behaviors. And have I been there and done that? Absolutely. That's why I can talk about it today. The perfectionism and being controlled, and the things that my parents turned me into, right? And now I'm getting upset over little things because you didn't put something back the way I wanted it to do, or you didn't sweep the floor the way I wanted it to be swept, or you didn't do something that the way I wanted it to be done, right? And that's being controlling. And that comes from me being controlled. And so what happens is, how we were treated, we then project that on other people. And then we start doing the same thing to other people, but we don't necessarily recognize it, because why?
Mm-hmm.
Dealt with our past, and we haven't dealt with what has happened to us, and we haven't processed that and reflected on it, and we're not being self-aware of what that turned us into. And so now those issues that we had then, when someone displays it to us at work or at home or at church or even in the store, we're reacting in a way and don't even know why we're reacting that way. And that's why it's just very, very important for us to understand our past, deal with our past, so we can heal and stop normalizing these behaviors that aren't normal. It's not good and it's not normal to cuss your child out. It's not. Have I done it? Yes, I'm not going to act like I ain't said a cuss word to my child before, but I'm convicted when I do so. God convicts me and I'm like, oh gosh, I shouldn't have did that. Now, some of us may do it and think like it's okay, but we've got to stop normalizing some of these things that we're doing with our families and in our marriages and at work, because we're not good.
Right.
We're not good.
Right. And that's one of the things that I definitely preach all the time. Like you said, you're not good. Like I even did a whole video, and that's the name of it, of one of my podcasts, is you're not good, and dealing with that very issue. And I want to go back a little bit to one of the things you said, because I know that one of the things that you speak about is, not only does our parents don't define us, but our past does impact us, right? It does have an impact on the things that we do now, and also the things that we do in the future, right? And even that's part of my story. Just even as an example, the fact that I'm even the friends to fatherless daughters, that comes from a lifetime of dating fatherless daughters, which I didn't even recognize until I started having issues in my marriage. And my wife at the time was a fatherless daughter, and start putting that together, like, oh, wait a minute, every woman I've ever dated has been a fatherless daughter. So it's like, okay, either they're attracted to me, or I'm attracted to them, but for whatever reason, we're connecting. And so that kind of put me in the whole mindset of, sharing my viewpoint on some of the effects of fatherlessness on daughters, which I was already doing it for young men, because I had a male mentor program. But this was a whole nother role, right? Coming to speaking on fatherlessness, dealing with fatherless daughters. And then it also goes back to what I said earlier, when God gave me that quote, that I can't even think of what it is now. But progress is the evidence that he's at work. So I already had the male mentor stuff going on. But then when I started to Friends with Fatherless Daughters, which just was really a platform for me to just express my opinion about it, it took off so fast, with that whole concept and everything, that I had to kind of hold on, like, whoa. So because that's where the progress was going, hey, God, I see you working. Let me go this way, And so, but that plays a part from my things from my past and up to my present, that impacts our future. So when you're talking with someone, that maybe has not recognized that, what maybe would be something that you bring to their attention that to allow them to see, even though you're not connecting the dots, these things that has happened in your past is playing out right in front of you, like you just said a second ago.
Absolutely. So our past, it's twofold. The impact is twofold, right? It can have a negative impact into where we become, as I say, not who God intended us to be. You know, God has a plan for our lives, and he created us to be a certain way and a certain person because he created us in his likeness and his image. But the things that have happened to us over our lifetime has turned us into someone that is not necessarily in his image. It's not who he created us to be. And then that's when you have to start learning to unbecome and unlearn some of these behaviors that you have adopted and developed because of your past experiences. And once you're able to start doing that, once you're able to start healing, that's when you, in changing your mindset, that's when you can start to see and start connecting the dots. As long as you're boggled down with all these emotional blockers from the things that have happened in your past, meaning that the anger, the bitterness, the doubts and the insecurities and the mistrust and the perfectionism and the controlling, all of these things that we adopt from our past. Once we can start healing from those dysfunctional self-sabotaging behaviors, it kind of opens up your mind to see. As long as those emotional blockers are there, you can't see, right? It's like having on sunglasses and it's nighttime. You're not going to be able to see.
Right.
And so you got to take those blockers off. You got to remove those sunglasses so that you can be able to see clear and be able to now start connecting the dots. And what you will find is, again, the pain that I went through, all the things that I've gone through, God turns them around for your good. As they say, what the devil meant for evil, God turns into good. So now we got to start looking at the lesson learned. I call it the lesson learned, the silver lining, or the victory in the situation. What was I supposed to learn? What can I learn from this? What is my takeaway that I can now apply to my life in order to propel it forward in a positive manner, right? And so I teach them to start looking at the positive side of what happened, because what's happening is we're dwelling on the negative side of what happened. We now need to look at the positive side. What am I supposed to have gotten out of this? And sometimes it's very hard for folks to make that transition in their mind. But we got to start seeing a different perspective, because when we start seeing a different perspective and we start looking at the situation different, that also is part of the healing process, because now I'm changing the scenario. You know, I spoke on if I could say this, I spoke on a video. I don't know if it was yesterday or earlier this week, but one of my things of when I was going through the pain of a failed relationship, I used to watch this show called Cheaters. Okay. And I was cheated on. So every time I watched Cheaters, I would cry. I had to change the scenario, right? And so I had to stop watching Cheaters, and I had to do some healing, that when I go back to watch Cheaters, guess what? It doesn't impact me. It doesn't make me cry. I don't feel anything. I don't feel what I used to feel. And so when we start seeing scenarios differently, because now I saw my scenario differently, I saw my scenario of being cheated on differently. And because I seen it differently, I changed the scenario. We have to change the scenario of what we've gone through. And we do that by finding the lesson learned, finding the silver lining, finding that victory in it all, so that when we look back on it, we see the positive side of what I was supposed to get out of that, how it changed my life. And so for me, in telling my story, I can go back and tell them, well, this happened to me, but this was the good thing that happened to me. And then that's when you start connecting the dots. And it's like, oh my God, oh my God. And they just start coming, especially when you start discovering what your purpose is. Because now you realize, I went through this and I experienced this and I saw this, and all of this led me to this, my purpose. And it led me to who God created me to be. And that's when you just start unlearning and unbecoming. But you gotta unlearn and unbecome in order to start connecting those dots, because you just can't see.
Right, and it goes back to one of the things that you said a few minutes ago, which was changing your mindset, and that is so it especially in the coaching space. A lot of times it may sound cliche because like everybody always talking about change your mindset, but it really is the key to changing everything that you're
It
dealing
is.
with. It's the way that you look at it, the way that you're processing it. Because if you don't change your mindset, like you said, you cannot connect those dots because you're looking at each experience as a separate thing. Like I went through this, and then I went through this,
Exactly.
and then I went through that, not knowing that this one dot connect to this experience, connect to this experience, and then when you put them all together, you see the straight line that's leading you, like you said, to your purpose. And now you're like, oh, that's what it is, you
Yep.
know. And my pastor used to say, and he still says that when people ask how long would this lesson last, because life is always give you lessons, and this experience that you go through is a lesson. And
Exactly.
so people always say, well, how long would this lesson last? And he will say, it's going to last until you pass. Right. So you have the same thing happening in your life over and over again. And oftentimes not back to back, which is why you think you done got over something, or you think you done healed from something, because you go through it at this one time and then you don't hear from it no more. And then it pops up again. And you're like, I thought I healed from that. No, it wasn't over. You know what I'm
That
saying?
was me.
It's gonna
That was
last
me.
until you pass. So now it's just time for the retest. You know, he gave you a little time to study, a little time to do a little better. But now here you go with the same experience again, because you have to pass it. And you pass it by learning the lessons, like you said, that being able to look at it and figure out what was I supposed to take out of this experience, and how was I supposed to use it for the greater good. Because there's nothing, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. So there's nothing new that's been happened. There's nothing that's been happened to you that haven't happened to someone else. There's nothing that has happened to you that is not going to happen to someone after you. But the difference is when you learn the lessons that you're supposed to learn in that experience, those that come after you, that hear your voice and hear your testimony, they'll know that they can make it through because you made it through and you gave a voice to it and was that light that they was able to see in the midst of why they were going through it.
Now, let me say this to the listeners. When you keep going or finding yourself in the same situation, um, the same cycles and patterns, you have to then realize that there's something you need to change. God is trying to get something to you. God is trying to get you to learn something. God is trying to get you to change something. God is trying to get you to see something different. He is trying to change your life. And you're not, as you say, getting the lesson. And we've got to realize, what is that lesson? And I've had that experience, if I could share that. One that always stands out in my mind. Um, I was always having an issue on the job with um, women in management. And so every job I had, it was just like very micromanaging, very controlling. We're butting heads, and I had one job, leave that. I have another job, and so I'm on this job, and I'm like really upset. Like, and I'm saying to myself, why do I keep having these same situations on the job? And I remember saying to my father, why does God keep putting me in these situations? And his response to me was, God didn't do that. God didn't put you in that situation. And I don't know, him saying that, it just kind of put a light bulb off in my head. And then he started talking to me about, and he started teaching me about how to see things differently. There's something that you are supposed to learn that you're not learning. And there's something that you're supposed to change about who you are and how you're showing up. And when I got that revelation, it's been totally different for me. But I had to be able to see that I'm in these situations over and over again because I wasn't learning the lesson of how I was supposed to respond, how I was supposed to be showing up, how I was supposed to be thinking, how I was supposed to be interacting with others. And ultimately, I wasn't learning how to empathize with other people's situation. Because what happens now is the same way I've been hurt and I'm acting a certain way, they've been hurt. And that's why they act the way they do. People don't just micromanage because they want to micromanage. And I had to realize, why are they micromanaging? That's a form of being controlling. And people are controlling because something happened to us to be controlling, because that's a defense mechanism that we put in place because something has happened to us. And now to protect myself, I got to control people in situations, right?
Yep.
And so you got to make sure that when you keep finding yourself in the same situation, that you stop and think about what am I supposed to be doing? Because God is trying to get something to you.
That is it. That is it right there. That is it right. That's why you're the coach. You know what I'm saying? That's why you're the coach. Because I mean, that within itself, especially the whole scenario that you just gave, it opened up the eyes and the understanding of so many people that is going through that is asking that same question, like, why am I keep going through the same thing over and over again? And a lot of times, you know, especially in my line of work with fatherless daughters, it is some hurt that is there that you've never addressed, and it's showing up. You know what I mean? It's showing up, and it's showing up on a job. It's showing up in your family. It's showing up in your relationships, and you just haven't got to the point that you're taking the time to address it. Like, okay, the experience is not just the experience. You know what I mean? There's a reason why you're here again. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why. You know, and you just have to be able to take the time to look at it and address those issues. And I like the way how you just explained that. Again, that's why you're the coach. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about your coaching program and how that came about, because I'm interested in that, and how the way that you address, it's not just for women, right? It's for women and men.
It is for women, but I keep having men who want me to have a class for them. So
hey, you know what I said? Where progress is, that's God at work. So that's God at work.
Do. I'm like, let me see what I can do. But yeah, my coaching program is for women, but men keep wanting to do the program as well. And they really could. It's just that in some of the videos, training videos, I say queen, and you don't want me calling you a queen. So I would need to re-record some things and call them kings instead of queens. But it is just for women. But before we talk about the coaching program, I want to say, can I go back real quick and just say this real quickly? I want to say that a lot of times we always think in those situations when I talk about the cycles, that the other person is the problem. They're the problem, right? But we keep going through this cycle, and in that cycle, we got to realize we're the problem, we're the issue, we're the one who needs to change, and we have to be the change that we want to see, right? And we got to stop thinking it's always the other person and start looking at, well, what could I have done? What could I do? What could I change? What can I do better in order to make the situation better? I just wanted to throw that in there.
Hey, no problem. So with your coaching program, how long have you been doing it?
Wow, I've been doing it probably for a couple years now. So I did some in-person classes, but then the pandemic hit, and I was not prepared to pivot.
Right.
So it's kind of it took me a while to pivot, but I launched the virtual program last year.
Okay.
But I've been mentoring and coaching in corporate America for a while.
Oh, corporate. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm taking those things that, like we talked about, we got to connect the dots, right? Even on your jobs, because we got to think about our jobs and how they lead us to our purpose as well. And I like to tell people that we have temporary destinies that prepare us for our purpose. And so when we're on these jobs, we're supposed to learn something on that job. And a lot of times we don't want to do that extra work, or we don't want to do that training, or we don't want to do the things that's going to be resume builders, not realizing that we are there to learn something that's supposed to help us with our purpose. And so I can say for me, once I began to discover my purpose, I began to realize, oh my God, that job prepared me to know this. This job prepared me to know this. And this training prepared me. And so now all of these things that I've had on these jobs are now becoming assets for me in building my coaching program. But one of those things that was an asset for me was learning to facilitate and train and coach and mentor folks on the job. And so I've been doing that for years, in being a trainer, a coach, and a mentor, and helping people get to the next level on their job, helping them get the skills that they need, helping them with the resume, professionally developing them and coaching them on the job to be a better version of themselves so that they can be able to take their careers to the next level. So I was doing that, and now I see why I was always in these positions. Have to mentor and coach people on the job, because now it just was a natural transition for me into creating a coaching program to help people heal and take their life to the next level.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And that definitely gives a testament to everything that we've been saying, how those things that you've been through connect the dots to lead you to your purpose and to the things that you've been called to do. And that even leads us here to this, with this podcast, which is part of my purpose. But also you have a podcast too that I've told you before. I really like it, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was listening to it earlier today, and I'm just like, man, this is some great stuff. So tell us a little bit of how you came, to the idea of starting the podcast and the whole premise, which I guess is connected with your training program as far as becoming. But what led you to start a podcast, and then what gave you the idea of what the format will actually be about?
Sure. So what led me to starting the podcast was the pandemic, because I was again doing the training in person. And when the pandemic hit, I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And so I started doing Facebook Lives because I just heard from God to do these Facebook Lives. And so once I started doing them, I kind of was enjoying putting these conversations together. And then in brainstorming with a friend, we just got this idea that, because my whole thing was I need people to see things differently. If we can change our mind and see things differently and change our perspectives, we can start to heal. So we had this brilliant idea that we would start doing these Facebook Lives on Mondays, and it was called Think Outside the Red Box. And so that was kind of my podcast. I would do these Facebook Lives, and then I would load them up to YouTube. Wasn't even thinking about the audio version of anything. And so we did that for a while. We did that for I want to say 8-9 months. We did it for quite a bit of time, but I ended up stopping because I had to stop and really think about my mission and what God was leading me to do, because I kind of felt myself going in other places that weren't feeling good. It wasn't feeling right. And so I had to stop and say, okay, God, what is it that you really want me to do? Because now I feel like I'm all over the place. And I heard him say, I need you to go back to the first thing that I told you to do. And when I started thinking about what was the first thing he told me to do, and it was to heal, give women, or give people the process for healing. But of course, as you build a business, they teach you to have an audience and a niche. And so that's why I service women, because, I can relate to them and they can relate to me, because I've been through some of the things they've been through. But long story short, how did I come back to it? I got the bug, and I loved it. I loved the interaction. I loved the conversation. I just love being able to put something out there that people can learn from. So the moment I could redo it again after restructuring my business, I had to look at restructuring the podcast and really saying to myself, what is my mission and how can I really make this effective? And then just keeping in mind that God has sent me here to help people become who He created them to be so they can walk in purpose and have an abundant life. It just seemed like a natural transition for revamping my a different podcast and being able to again have those conversations, because my mission is to for people to be able to get unstuck and unbothered. I want you to heal from your past so that you can pursue your dreams. That's my mission. And so that's also the mission of the podcast. I want to show you something different. And I want to give you that blueprint. We talk about the process of healing. I want to give you the blueprint. What did others do to heal? And then what did they do to create their success? We want to give you the blueprint to win, to get in position to win at love, life, and money. We want you to win in all areas of your life. And so it just became a natural thing for me to do a podcast where I am letting people tell their stories of how they overcame. And then they were able to build their success so that you can watch this and get a blueprint like, oh, they did this, this, and this. Let me try that, right? Because that's how my healing started. It started with me saying to myself, let me try God. I mean, I've been born and raised in the church, and I keep hearing them always talking about, created God and this, that, and the God. And I'm like, let me give this a try. And it's amazing how you can be in church all those years and never really have a relationship with God. I didn't have a relationship. Born and raised, I didn't know nothing about. I really didn't know. And so I said, let me try it. Let me see. And I opened up a Bible and I began to read, and my mind was opened up and it began to change. So sometimes it's just a matter of somebody saying, this is what I did. And you said, let me try that. And then you try it and realize, oh my God, it works.
Right.
What I'm hoping to do with my podcast.
Well, you're definitely doing it. You're definitely doing it. And like I said, I listen to it. I definitely enjoy it. And I encourage all my listeners to also go check it out. It's
Thank you.
Becoming to Being, right? That's the name of
It's
Becoming to
Becoming
Being.
with Angelina Watkins.
Oh, okay. All right.
But my
So,
company is Becoming the Being.
okay. I knew it was in there somewhere. Angelina, man, let me tell you, I definitely have enjoyed having you on. I definitely have enjoyed your teaching and your viewpoint, of sharing with us, through the life lessons that you've learned, and definitely bringing value to my platform. I definitely appreciate you for it very much. So before we get out of here, I'll let you have the last word. You can leave us with a word of wisdom or whatever, but definitely leave us with your social media handles, website, whatever you have going on, so the listeners know where they can come in contact with you at. So the floor is yours.
Sure. So first I gotta say thank you. I'm very honored to be on here. This was wonderful. You can find me on Instagram at Becoming Angelina Watkins, and you can find me on Facebook if you want to just follow my personal page. It's just Angelina Watkins. And my coaching program, if you're interested in the coaching program, before I have people enroll, I do encourage them to take my free case study training that'll kind of give them an idea of what the program is all about. But it's a free training that goes through the 4 steps of that they need to do in order to get the confidence, the clarity that they need to find purpose. And so that's at queensformation.com. So they can go to www.queensformation.com and take advantage of that free case study. And then once they've watched that, they can book a call to enroll. And what do I want to tell the people? Well, I just have to tell the people what I always tell the people. Your past does not define you. You define you. Or should I say God defines you, right? So we got to heal, transform, and pursue you.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Angelina Watkins. Hey, everybody, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening. Again, this is Earnest James. This is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And my mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problems, heal from your pain, and fulfill your purpose. Until next time, thanks for listening. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866 326 0730. That's 866 326 0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.